of those buildings you see along the riverbank. One of the buildings here was Whampoa's Ice House, which belonged to Hu Ah-kei, a prominent businessman from Whampoa, China. Way before refrigerators existed, he noticed the demand for ice in our hot tropical weather and had blocks of ice hauled from frozen lakes in America all the way here to Singapore. Unfortunately, his ice venture had been transformed into a different but no less bustling port of call. Everyone flocks here for food, fun, and riverside festivals. You may notice another bridge here. This one's called Reed Bridge, and it would seem yet another symbol of bringing people together. From the 1940s to the 1960s, this bridge was a popular place for storytellers to gather and jianggu, or shuoshu, which means talking about the past or talking about books. The Chinese community would gather here nightly to be entertained. The storyteller would start by talking about the day's news, then continue with riveting classic tales from ancient China. Each episode would last the duration of a burning joss stick, and the audience would pay just 1 cent in the 1940s and just 5 cents in the 1960s. Chinese wayang, or opera, was another popular form of entertainment back then, and there were 2 Teochew opera theaters here. In the 1950s, admission to watch an entire performance was just 50 cents, but the common practice was to only pay 5 or 10 cents just to catch the last 10 minutes, which was the most exciting part of the show. Some might say this opportunistic spirit of frugalness endures amongst the most cunning of Singaporean businessmen till today. During festivals and religious events, the opera performances would be staged outdoors for all to enjoy free of charge. Underbelly of opium dens, brothels, and secret societies. Addicts, ladies of the night, and gangsters jostled for space in this once dangerous, mysterious place. But today, the building Riverside Point sits on the historical foundations of that notorious village. No longer dangerous and seedy, but a delightful waterfront dining oasis that boasts its very own microbrewery. Perhaps you'd like to return by foot to explore all these fun possibilities. Did you know that the paths along the Singapore River make up one continuous looping promenade that connects everything you see along the riverbanks? Take a leisurely stroll. Singapore's first experimental botanic garden to cultivate commercially imported spices. The hill was later used by the British as an arms store, barracks, and hospital, which probably led to its final name, Fort Canning. But way before the British arrived on our shores, Fort Canning was the place where ancient Malayan royalty once lived and were laid to rest. It was considered so sacred that it was known as Forbidden Hill. Forbidden because commoners were not allowed to visit. Of course, all that has changed, and now you're most welcome to visit Fort Canning to see the old British underground bunkers, and if you're really brave-hearted, explore the ancient gravestones that still remain on its shady slopes. Attention! See the one adorned with colorful windows on your left? Home to the Ministry of Information, Communications and the Arts, its multi-hued facade not only reflects Singapore's multicultural heritage, but also hints at the building's equally colorful past. Can you believe that this rainbow-splashed complex used to be the old Hill Street Police Station and was once considered a skyscraper? But that was before World War II. In fact, The Old Hill Street Police Station served as Singapore's earliest secure jail. And during World War II, it's even believed to have been a torture chamber. With such a vivid history, it's certainly no wonder the building was named a National Monument in 1998. On your right is Boat Quay and its stretch of colourful, quaint shophouses. It was completed in 1842 and is Singapore's very first quay, transporting a whole myriad of goods to be traded by the merchants who had set up shop in that row of buildings on the bank. Some of those goods included seafood, spices, and rubber. The precious cargo was shouldered across gangplanks by immigrant laborers known as coolies, whose blood, sweat, and tears formed the very backbone of our nation's rise to prosperity. Wonder why all the shophouses are a great place to store wealth? These first immigrants believed that this part of the Singapore River was where prosperity and wealth could be found. That's also why many banks and businesses started up here and eventually developed this area into our current central business district. Where once boats lined the water's edge, today the banks of Boat Quay are lined with shophouses turned into restaurants and pubs. The facades of the Boat Quay shophouses have been retained, and their unique architectural styles give the district a distinct flavor, set against a modern and progressive backdrop. See how the shophouses form a charming contrast of Singapore's developing years against the skyline of a new Singapore. This truly is a uniquely Singapore sight. By the way, are you feeling hungry? Hawkers and their pushcarts used to line the riverbanks, selling local dishes that were cheap and delicious. A bowl of Teochew porridge cost only 10 cents. Better yet, side dishes were free of charge. Every day, the people who worked and lived at the river would eat at these pushcarts, sitting on little stools along the river banks. Perhaps that was how al fresco dining got its start in Singapore. Directly ahead is Kavanagh Bridge. Completed in 1869 and named after Colonel Sir William Orford Kavanagh, Singapore's last governor, it's Singapore's only suspension bridge to have retained its intricate original form. It was manufactured in Scotland, then shipped to Singapore later to be assembled. Unfortunately, the bridge was built too low, and boats had to wait for low tide before they could pass. So look out and don't forget to duck as we cruise under the bridge. Just kidding, rivers passed, where children would stand and wave cheekily from the houses. Very often they would take off all their clothes and jump in for a cool afternoon swim. Standing tall and majestic is the exclusive Fullerton Hotel, which blends the elegance of old world charm with every modern convenience. Built in 1928, lots of paper pushing went on behind the hotel's splendid columns before its glamorous makeover. Its facade is a masterpiece of neoclassical grandeur, which belies its much stuffier original occupants, the Chamber of Commerce offices and the General Post Office, from which mail was transported along the Singapore River to and from ships. Since the 1950s, this This promontory to your right used to be home to the Merlion, Singapore's half-lion, half-fish icon. The Merlion stood guard here at the river mouth for 30 years before it was hauled by barge to its new home in the bay in 2002. As we make our way out into Marina Bay, you'll be able to see the Merlion for yourself and hear all about its story. As promised, up next is Merlion Park, home of the original Merlion statue. To understand our unique national emblem with the lion head and fish body resting on a crest of waves, here's a quick history lesson. Singapore was originally known as the ancient city of Temasek, which means sea town in Javanese. But according to legend recorded in the Malay annals, Prince Sang Nila Utama renamed it Singapura, meaning Lion City in Sanskrit, after he spotted a lion on its shores. The lion's head represents the lion spotted by the legendary Sang Nila Utama, while its fishtail symbolizes Temasek and Singapore's humble beginnings as a fishing village. Measuring 8.6 meters high and weighing 70 tons, the Merlion sits on reclaimed land looking out to sea. She attracts millions of visitors a year who make the trip to Merlion Park to photograph this world-famous icon at her new home right here in scenic Marina Bay. The colonial landscape of Singapore.
Eva.
As promised, our way back upriver, you may be curious about the type of vessel we're cruising in. Traditionally called bumboats or lighters, these barges were used to transport cargo from ships anchored offshore near the mouth of our Singapore River to the warehouses along the river as early as 150 years ago. In 17th century Europe, they were first used as scavenger or dirt boats to carry rubbish. But some scholars have also agreed that the word bumboat means exactly as it sounds, a ship's bottom or a smaller boat pandering to larger ships. In Singapore, though, bumboats are also called tongkangs, from the Malay name given to the timber used to build them and used for transport between islands. Bumboats are also referred to by the Chinese as duakos. These boats proudly originated in Singapore with hulls developed by the local Chinese. Hokkien duakos are the most colorful, with both heads painted bright red, green and white, while Teochew duakos were painted a solid red. Now, if you're thinking that the bumboats look like they have eyes painted on them, you're not wrong. According to in the early 80s, however, they made a triumphant return to the Singapore River and were given a new lease of life as pleasure craft by Singapore River Cruises. From a humble fleet of just 4 bumboats, that number has grown steadily to preserve our river's charming heritage. In 2006, Singapore River Cruises championed the environmentally friendly. In fact, this very boat we're cruising in is part of our electric bumboat fleet. As we'll soon be saying goodbye to what remains of a bygone era of life along the Singapore River, perhaps you'd like to hear a little more about her rich past. From the southern part of the island, these river waters truly thrum with the lifeblood of Singapore. You've heard a few stories of the early days, how the Singapore River transformed from a sparsely populated swamp to an important port for merchants and traders who docked their boats and built their businesses along the riverbanks. The Singapore River flourished into a busy, overcrowded